Good evening and welcome to Farmers After Hours Financial Fundamentals and Profitability series. We're thrilled to be here tonight and appreciate your participation. My name is Kate Teal and I work with the Michigan Foundation for Agriculture, and we are pleased to partner with Greenstone Farm Credit Services on this event. That being said, I'll toss it over to Amber to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Kate. I'm Amber Eklund. I'm with Greenstone Farm Credit Services. I am the PR specialist in the marketing department, and we're really excited to have you all here today and to introduce the farmer panelists. Rich, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Rich Baker from Sturgis, Michigan. I grew up on a family farm raising hogs, cattle, and a few specialty crops along the way. We're right in the seed corn capital of the world. So we get all different types of seasons, all different scenarios around this operation, and that's the best case scenario right now is in the middle of seed corn harvest, and we'll get her done somehow.
And I'm Trevor Gruber. I'm from Reese, which is like by Frankenmuth, Saginaw area. Grew up on the family farm. Went away to school, didn't study anything that has to do with farming. Now, me and my brother have both made our ways back, and we're in the third year of transitioning our farm from conventional to an organic farm. Hopefully to increase, so we can all stay working on the farm as a full-time job. And so, yeah, it's been quite an adventure.
Did that sum it up for you, Kate?
That was fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate you joining us this evening and your willingness to share some of your background and experiences with your peers. Got folks joining us live anonymously this evening, and we'll be recording this for future audiences. So as we talk a little bit about financial fundamentals, profitability, innovation on the farm, neither of you are strangers to any of those concepts. A question that we've had sort of populated is how have you seen innovative concepts work on your farms, and how has that diversification or enhancement of your practices helped generate new revenue streams?
You want me to go first?
Russell. Sure, if you're willing, that'd be awesome.
So kind of in 2011, my first year farming somewhere around 700 acres on my own. About half of that was underwater. And we are in some Oshtemo sandy loam soil here in St. Joe County with a readily available water source. So one of my solutions to the whole problem was to make sure that all my ground was irrigated. I didn't need to farm 10,000 acres. I just needed to make sure what I was farming was the most productive that I could get out of it. And I got hooked up with some farmers out in the Ogallala Aquifer and was buying their used center pivots because they are tied up with the water use that they can use. Going out, tearing them apart, bringing them back, and putting them on newly irrigated ground for about 10% of the cost of a brand new one. And so over the past 7 years, we've added almost 1,000 acres of newly irrigated ground with used center pivots out of Nebraska.
Yeah, right around the same acreage when me and my brother moved back, we were farming about 1,600 acres, and we were kind of talking about how to get our most bang for our buck. And with the way the conventional prices were and the way, we have some neighbors that were organic, we started looking around to see, if our ground was the right type of ground that organic soil could, that organic crops could be grown on. And we determined that it was, and now we have 750 acres that's organic this year, with about 400 coming on next year, and the following year about another 100. So we'll be around about 1,200 acres total as far as the organic, and that's hopefully that pans out. Kind of gonna have to see what the prices dictate is about how far we'll go.
Excellent. So diversification has been a pretty unique opportunity, and you've really innovated to help maintain those maintain revenue across the past couple of years on both of your farms. When you talk to folks, Trevor, you're talking about coming back to the family farm and having been made that decision relatively recently. If you're chatting with other new, young, beginning farmers, and Rich, you mentioned your history, what's one piece of advice that you would provide someone who's looking into trying something innovative on the farm or diversifying their farming operation? What are the first 2 to 3 steps that you took, and who would you connect them with? Like, who would you want on your farm team as you're starting a similar process? Maybe from scratch?
The first thing is you got to make your balance sheet. What's your inputs and your outputs? That's the biggest thing as far as, I don't really, and it has to be accurate. You can't, hope for 250 bushel corn and $5. That's not applicable. Make a realistic balance sheet. And we made a conservative, a moderate one, and then a high potential one. And then, if you're going to do the organic, we're not in the clear by any means, but that was 2 years of struggling, and we worked hand in hand with Greenstone quite a bit, because there was a lot of different equipment that we bought and a lot of maintenance that you had to do to the older equipment that you bought. So as far as an honest balance sheet, and if you're, what's your alternative? If you're just going to raise conventional crops, you better have, something else on the side, unless you own all your land, then that's a different story.
I'd have to bounce the same kudos off Trevor there. Biggest thing, you got to know where your cost, your break-even cost is in a drought year, and we're a little bit fortunate. We can kind of control the water with irrigation. So, but the irrigation doesn't run for free either. So, yeah.
So great points, nailing it, gentlemen, as far as, talking about having an honest balance sheet, right? An honest balance sheet. And Trevor, you mentioned partnering with and working with a Greenstone Farm Credit Services or a similar, a lender or a consultant. When you talk about who's on your farm team, when you're trying to make these decisions, who else could there potentially be? Would you want someone else to be on your team? And if you're talking about consultant through like a Greenstone, what things would you talk about to help get those those skids greased to move forward and have forward progression if it's a viable option?
Go ahead, Rich.
You definitely want somebody that I think has been through the times. I mentioned before that I had my dad and grandpa. And when I bought them out in 2011, man, I was ready to go gung ho. I was going to buy a tractor every 3 years and trade it, and I had all these big plans and nice shiny equipment. And when it come right down to it, I did the math. I had to put 1,000 hours a year on my tractor to make that tractor pay. And so I did. I bought one nice one, but I still own it. Here we are 8 years later. So it's just having those people that have been through that. My grandpa pulled the reins back on me numerous times to, hey, should you make that move? Or should you hang yourself out there that far? And it was one thing we had going for us was I started in 2011. My second year in 2012, went through a drought and got to harvest my record-breaking 22 bushel an acre corn crop. And so learned the second year in this business that your dreams can all be shattered in 1 year pretty easily. So
from as far as my point of view, we've been blessed to have a lot of organic farmers around in our area that they do it different ways. You know, we have a neighbor that farms 3,000 acres organic. We have a neighbor that farms 400 acres organic, and they've both been immensely helpful as far as expectations and, you know, ways to sell it. And then also probably the biggest point is my brother and I have been blessed to have my dad who's been wrenching his whole life, because he's probably done more wrenching his last 3 years than he did the previous 10 combined, with all the old cultivators and rotary hose and, you know, stuff we just keep accumulating and buying. So, I mean, the numbers can work all they want, and the neighbors can tell you what they think, but we don't, brother and I don't exactly have the wrenching knowledge to get that done. So I would say neighbors, good, trustworthy neighbors, are about as good as you can get as far as advice and mentors and stuff like that.
Beautiful. Y'all set me up perfectly for my next question. You talk about family members and mentors. Are there folks, you both mentioned family, outside of family and neighbors, do you have other mentors? Have you worked with a mentor-based program through any organization that you would recommend to someone who's really looking to set some fundamentals in place?
I'd kind of just say that I've got to be really close friends with a couple, also specialty crop growers in my area. And if we don't talk at least once a day, it's probably 10 times a day, bouncing other ideas, or, hey, do you sell some corn today? Should you sell some beans? I mean, all those decisions goes through the rumor mill, is what I would call it, before we make that decision. And it's a pretty good group of guys. You can talk about farming, you can talk about the wife and kids. I mean, it's one thing to get some things off your chest here and there, and then to be able to farm every day. It's my dad said a long time ago that if it was easy, everybody would do it. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Rich as far as that goes. As far as a mentor, I would say we don't really have a professional mentor. You know, there's a couple salesmen, that sell us the equipment, and then, once again, our banker who, they don't. When we brought up the idea of transitioning our farm over, there was nobody that was like, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" From the salesman or the banker. It was, yeah, the guys that are doing it are they're successful with it. It's a lot of work, but if you can make it work, it's successful. So I would just, like I said, not really professional mentor, but definitely, neighbors and, from my point of view, my dad and uncle who are on the farm as well. They've been through the highs and the lows.
As you vet ways to diversify or innovate on the farm, are there any systematic approaches that you have? I mean, Rich and Trevor, you both mentioned that there have been numerous times in the last several years where you've sort of innovated and created new opportunities to diversify yourself and to have new revenue streams on farm outside of the balance sheet, and tossing these ideas past those mentors. Do you have any specific plan in place prior to doing that?
I really didn't have a plan. I put a pencil to everything, and we kind of got started with, we bought our first self-propelled sprayer in 2012 and kind of rounded up enough custom work to make the payment. Well, then that led to, how about you buy a combine and header, and then how about you buy a grain cart, and then you need another semi. And before you know it, we were farming 1,000 acres, but we were custom farming 2,000. And I guess I credit that to some neighbors that hired me to do that custom work. But it allowed me to buy some of the newer, up-to-date equipment, because I could make that payment off the custom work. I mean, like my corn planter is all precision planting. We haven't done it all in one step. We we did electric meters one year, and then we did speed tubes another year, and so it's kind of been building up to what we've got now. And like I said, that custom work has allowed me to make those big expenditures and have some of the state-of-the-art equipment to use on my operation. Because I'm not sure 1,200 acres, 1,300 acres right now is, I don't think you could pencil it without being able to spread it out.
Yeah, and like Rich said, we don't do very much custom work. We might rent out a piece of equipment every now and then, but we have a trucking company that has 5 trucks on the road, and they're for the most part all over the U.S. So they actually, they help us out a lot with the shop payments and the equipment, and we always have trucks and trailers, so that's drivers, which is a huge thing, these days. But I think that I still think we made the planner upgrade this last year, and hopefully that's just another step. And as far as what the future holds, I don't know if we've been talking about putting pivots on our land, and I don't know if we're going to be able to keep raising corn, soybeans, dry beans, or if in the next 5 to 7 years it's going to be tomatoes and squash and more vegetables, but on a large scale as far as the organic goes. We've just had the trucking business has really helped us subsidize the gaps as far as that goes.
It kind of sounds like you all don't give yourself enough credit. You talk about not having a plan, but quite honestly, you both provided references to working with neighbors to ensure that you had enough custom work, or that you have a place for some of these different specialty crops or organics to go, so that you can continue when years may be fiscally challenging as a result of the farm economy, right? So I don't think you give yourself enough credit, either of you or your families, for the pieces that you've put in place to have long-term viability on farm. And beyond the financial component, using that network that you've created to ensure that there's stability year over year for the various facets of your farming operations. So beyond innovating, are there other practices that you've instilled on farm that really have helped create financial stability, as long as we're in that vein of conversation?
I guess I'll go ahead, Rich. That's fine.
Just kind of being in the seed corn competition world where I'm at, we got Pioneer, or now Corteva, and Monsanto, which is now Bayer. And then you have Menden seed growers, you have Lord Seed, you have Remington Seed. So there's about 240,000 acres of seed corn that's raised within 25 miles of my house. And it was just kind of the bandwagon that my operation seen coming, that we needed to get involved with, and working with other neighbors to make sure you don't have a whole bunch of isolation along each fence row, so you can plant that high valuable crop right up to the fence row. And then to have that good working relationship with that neighbor that sometimes you'll have seed 2 years in a row, sometimes you only have it once. And so you guys just got to have that working relationship. But we've grown my seed corn contract. I started in 2011. I had 45 acres, and now we're banking around that 900, 925 this year. So it's Remington is who I raised for, and I think I do a pretty good job for them, and I just do whatever I can to make them happy. And I can make money raising seed corn. I'm not quite sure I could pencil it this year to raise commercial corn. So Trevor's up now.
And I guess as far as our farm, I would say, we're doing the organic crops, but we recently built our own planter last winter, and now we have all the updated yield monitor in the combine. So it's a lot more lot of different practices that we are, you know, doing as far as starters and fertilizers and stuff like that. And then we'll look at the yield map at the end of the year and see, you know, what worked and what didn't work, you know. Just like I'm sure in the seed corn, you know, a couple bushels a lot different in the organic market than it is in the conventional market. So having, you know, trying different types of stuff or different rates of fertilizer makes a huge difference, you know, for us. And then we also this year invested in we bought a house and we have our own labor crew, which no one really has thought about. You know, no one really thinks about how difficult it is to get labor, but that was a huge pain for us last year. And we kind of bit the bullet this year and bought a house and had a really nice family from Texas come up, and they actually just left today. And that was immensely helpful, both from a stress point of view, a work ethic point of view that they had, and just, you know, strictly monetary value. You don't have to go to different crews and, you know, have them bid the work for the field. This is what the rate is, and this is, you know, we know the type of job that they'll do. So, you know, that's consistency is the biggest thing.
Keep their number.
Yeah.
Get them back next year.
So we've talked a lot about innovation and diversification to provide additional revenue on farm, and you've talked about some tools and strategies that you utilize on farm to help ensure viability long range. When you start thinking about next year or the next 3 to 5 years in projecting how to best move forward on farm, do you have any trusted advisors that help you with that process? And if you do, and someone's thinking about starting, or maybe they're struggling on farm, you know, who is there a group? You know, is it estate planning? Is it succession planning? Is it, you know, what category would those consultants fall into on your farm team? And would you recommend other folks utilizing similar resources?
As far as that goes, from my point of view, is getting, you know, like I said, our neighbors have been great, but also we have some neighbors that are, you know, 40 years older than me. And then we have some neighbors that are the same age. And then we have some neighbors that are, you know, in between. And then they're all different sizes of farms and where they think things are going. So I'd like to talk to the people that are more my age, because they know that you know, they know where it's going, or most of them have done it longer than we have. So they, you know, they'll tell you what they think the price is going to be in 3 years, whether you want it to be that price or not. So, you know, it's talking to people that are all different ages, but at the same time, think about where I'm at and where we're going. I'm not going to be retiring for probably 60 years if I'm lucky. So, you know, you just gotta find people that are in the same boat as you.
I'd have to kind of agree with that. When I was farming 700 acres, I was using just a private accountant to look over my books and do my taxes. And then we've kind of moved more to Amber's company, Greenstone. They're currently doing everything for us, taxes, and it is a lot nicer now that we are in that platform. Having somebody looking over, my wife does all the QuickBooks work, but to have an individual from that branch to check us out twice a month to make sure she's inputting everything correctly. And I mean, it is so nice to be able to pull up a balance sheet about any time of the year and figure out exactly where you're at and what we need to do here and where we're going to get this money from to pay these last electric bills that we've got to figure out how to pay for here. So.
Yeah, I probably could add too. We use Greenstone a lot as far as we don't have to do our taxes and stuff like that. We're kind of going to be going through a succession plan, and so we've had the same tax guy for years. But our I guess, loan officer up to Greenstone. We talk at least every 2 weeks, about the direction that things are going, and just be honest about, like I said, the yields. He'll say, well, do you think you can really afford that? Or, hey, you should have a decent crop this year. I think that could really help you guys. So it's more honest feedback, from, a company such as Greenstone. That's who we use as well.
Sometimes all you need is a bit of a gut check, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And another set of eyes, because we're all human, and sometimes we don't see things that others might, both positive and negative. So it's nice to have a third party, whomever that trusted advisor might be, family member, Greenstone, other entity, to help in that regard. One of the topics that we're going to cover in mini sessions later in this series estate and transitional planning, and how to help folks get the right tools in their toolbox, and also connect to appropriate resources and support systems in that regard. Do either of you have sage wisdom that you're willing to share in regard to those kinds of conversations, tough conversations, or an entity who you could direct people to, or just an online resource that you've potentially used to help start those conversations for yourself and your farms?
Go ahead, Rich.
Kate, we seen Ron Hansen was at the Young Farmers Leaders Conference back in February, but he actually spoke to the Young Farmer Achievement Award finalist out in Austin, Texas, there back in, when was that, January, I think, something like that. So I got to listen to him for about 3.5 hours. For a gentleman that counsels through succession planning, he actually was on the doorstep. They got removed from their family farm by the police officers after his father passed away. So he's got a pretty heartbreaking story, and he is willing to help about anybody. So if I'd point anybody in that direction, and he does some seminars. I think he's got a couple things on YouTube. But how to get that question started right off the bat, and that was what his situation was nobody knew where to start that conversation. So.
And we're kind of in not the early talks. I think we have everything pretty settled on our farm with how our succession plan is going to work. It makes it pretty simple. It's my dad and his brother, and the only two kids. My brother and I are the only two kids that have any interest in farming. So when my uncle he's farmed his whole life. He wants it to succeed, just as much, if not more, than we do. So he's been pretty helpful and honest with what he wants going forward. And we got in contact with somebody my dad knew his whole life that actually used to work at Greenstone. He referred us to a succession plan attorney in Bay City, and we met with him for about 2.5 hours, 3 hours one day, and pretty much that was all that there was to it. I think we got to go in January and sign and make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, but it's more so everyone wants to be successful in our farm, and it helps it smaller too, for sure. But just be honest. Everyone's been honest about what they think is fair, and there hasn't been big discrepancies. And the attorney is pretty forward with how to do it as far as interest and stuff like that. A lot of things that we didn't think about, but like I said, about 2.5, 3 hours. We had a really good estate attorney in Bay City that helped us out.
Super tough conversations sometimes, but very pertinent discussions that folks have to have. And as someone who's had some of those conversations myself, they're not easy, but they are important, because sometimes life has a way of throwing unexpected circumstances our way, for sure. Thank you both for being willing to share your experience in that space. It's a discussion that it can really be challenging, but also can go easy as pie. So we're super happy that that's an experience that folks have on the positive end as well. We're getting close to our time to wrap up here, gentlemen. And again, we really appreciate your willingness to share your background and experiences. One last question that we've fielded is, when you've innovated or diversified on your operation, have you had access to any grants or funds, potentially through different programs that might exist? First question. Part B of the question would be, who did you work with? Like, was there an established organization? Was it through like USDA, NRCS, FSA, any entity such as that maybe you would recommend others considering?
So I can kind of start. I got a little unique story here. When I approached the conversation with my dad about buying my grandpa out, he was ironed out and you need to talk to grandpa, sort of thing. And so I went and seen grandpa and had to figure out, I basically said if I was getting any inheritance, I didn't want it right now. So we went through the whole, had 2 appraisals of all the equipment, took the average cost of all the equipment, and everything was black and white. There was no gray areas in the whole contract. And the first year in February, I applied for a young farmer startup loan through the Farm Service Agency. They can provide, or at that point, they would provide up to $300,000 for 7 years. And you could use that money for either equipment purchases or operating expenses. And so applied for that money and had everything cut and dry, how I was going to farm that year. April 5th come around and we hadn't received any money yet. I wasn't able to pay grandpa for any of the equipment, hadn't bought any seed, hadn't bought any fertilizer, had used up about every ounce of cash that I had at that point in time. And so here I was farming 750 acres with nothing, essentially. And so the FSA had approved my loan, but there was just no money available through the USDA, however they get their money through. I think it's through the Farm Bill. So that had to be renegotiated. We finally got that money. It came through right around the 1st of May. We had already made a couple other choices so I could get some things bought, but was able to utilize that program to buy all of the equipment that I needed to start farming from my grandpa. So there was I had to lease it for a year, or what was the cost per hour to use that piece of equipment. That was part of the making sure there was no gray area in that transition plan, that everything was pretty black and white. And it was an unforeseen circumstance that we ran into there, but everything worked out. I can just say it was a gut check. That first check I wrote was for $204,000, and you go from a personal checkbook where you're managing whatever peanuts money compared to what passes through the account now, but it was still $204,000. I can remember it today. So, but yeah, if anybody's extremely interested in that program, it is $400,000 now. They have upped it, and it's for 7 years. It was fairly cheap interest when I got started. I think I borrowed $300,000 for like 0.25%. It was really cheap money. So.
Yeah, and as far as stuff goes, for me personally, actually about 2 weeks from today, I'm going to apply for my young farmer loan. October 1st is the first day I can do it, because we have an agreement to buy a piece of land that we've farmed the last 2 years, And it's, I'm going up October 1st, so hopefully they don't run out of money. I'm the first one in line. But that's more for me personally, as far as to buy the land that I currently live on. As far as the organic, when we transitioned the whole farm to organic, it was, they have a couple $100 programs for like your application for certification and stuff like that. But it was more so Greenstone going up, right, and us, they reappraised everything for us and, kind of changed some terms on the loan, drew it out a little further, and gave us a intermediate loan for equipment and stuff like that, just to, kind of help us along. But once again, you had to have the balance sheet, say, why do you need this money? And, how are you going to ever pay this money back? And then they were, they checked you to make sure that you were accurate, which, we were, and we satisfied their requirements, but it was, we really didn't have any government programs as far as that goes, to help us transition other than just, Greenstone writing us a note. But like the FSA will help a ton. That's actually 600,000 for the land right now. And I think that interest rate's under 1. And then I think Greenstone matches the 600,000 with whatever their current rate is, which is right around 4.25 right now, I believe, is their program that I've been talking with our loan officer about. So that's a great way to get started as far as land. But once again, you have to make sure how you're going to make those payments.
Exactly.
So 2 more questions for you gentlemen have come in the last couple minutes. So first question being, if you could change anything else about your experience to date from a farm financial standpoint and creating a solid foundation, what would that be? And how would you change it?
Go ahead, Rich. You can go first.
Putting me on the spot.
I don't know how to change it.
Let me think about it for a second. Trevor might as well go first.
I would say one thing that I think we would change, and I think my dad would agree, is I wish we went organic about 10 years ago instead of this year. We kind of hemmed and hawed about it for years while I was in community college, then while I was in actual college, and I wish we would have done it. It's easy to say that now, who knew the risks or whatever, but
Just dive all
yeah, I wish we would have, dove all in. I wish we would have actually done all 1,200 acres in 1 year instead of, the 750 was a good chunk, but I'm glad we didn't do anything less. I wish we would have done it all in 1 year and been done with it, instead of now we got to have different type, some stuff we got to haul right to the elevator because our grain bins is organic, and, the equipment clean outs and stuff like that, where I don't know, if you're convinced it's the right decision, just go. Don't go 3/4 or half. Just go.
Well, my biggest problem was in 2013, we decided we were going to buy an apple orchard. And my wife and I told her I'd give her 5 years, and if we could make any money at it, we'd continue the quest. Well, just to let everybody know that can't see it, there's currently a 4-tower center pivot on it with about 35 apple trees left. So that was our biggest money pit. That first year we put like $80,000. It was Amish owned before we bought it, and we had to put in a whole new electric service, a whole new kitchen, a handicap accessible bathroom, and just the amount of money we poured into it. I should have known we were never going to recoup that $16 a bushel for apples. So, but it is fun. We are going to fire up the cider press here and press some cider for our own selves this fall. But yeah, as far as being open every day, not happening.
Sounds like a labor of love there, Rich. A true labor of love.
Well, I'd probably compare that to the organic side of things. I'm used to sitting in the seat. Row crops, you can do about everything from the seat. And the apples and strawberries and everything we had, most of that was hand-picked stuff. So trying to find help, like Trevor's saying, man, was it tough. It was tough.
Definitely something that resonates with a lot of folks that are farming today, for sure. And I promised, last question, if you could give one piece of advice to someone who's beginning their farm journey this year, what would it be?
They're not all this bad. I mean, who would ever thought we would have seen a rise in corn prices? Every financial analyst I seen coming into fall was, we're going to see 250 corn. We're going to see 250 corn. So there's a fair number of bushels of corn that were in trader programs, whether they be Freedom Daily traders or whatever they may be, that are going to be sold substantially under what we are today if you were to make a sale today. But I don't, yeah, they're not all going to be this bad. I hope not anyways. If not, there'll be a lot less of us. So.
Yeah. And as far as from our point of view, we're in pretty good shape, rain wise and price wise. They're not all going to be this good as far as this year's going to go. Just be honest as far as your, you got to price. What would you do if corn was 250 conventionally? And from the organic point of view, what are you going to do if corn is $6? If it's great, if it's $12, everyone can make money at $12, but what's your plan if it isn't $12? What's your plan if it's $6? And if you don't have a good plan for that, then you got to make something where, your prices aren't going to be that. You have to, you drive the supply.
Kind of the best of the situation at hand, plan for the worst, right? Solid pieces of advice, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time. We very much so appreciate your willingness to share your insight and experiences with your peers. Thanks for joining the Farmers After Hours live farmer panel. As we've mentioned several times during this farmer panel, balance sheets are really important. So next week, if you're interested, tune into our YouTube Farmers After Hours channel to hear a bit from Greenstone Farm Credit Services about understanding your balance sheet. With that, we appreciate everyone tuning in this evening and look forward to seeing you for the live expert panel with folks who are providing the mini session content over the next 6 weeks on Wednesday, November 7th at 7 p.m. This was brought to you by the Michigan Foundation for Agriculture, a 501c3 founded by the Michigan Farm Bureau with a mission of positively impacting the future of Michigan agriculture through leadership and educational programming. And we're so appreciative of Greenstone for walking beside us and helping to promote this series. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll catch you all November 4th.